Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the King's Vault podcast, where every conversation held on this platform is meant to evaluate, edify, and educate the minds of our young kings and queens in today's society. As always, we're not alone. Today, we have a special guest with us, Mr. Darius, coming in today to help us discuss this topic. We're going to be talking around mental health stigmas. I know a lot of things people don't want to do. Talk about is emotions. A lot of things Black men don't do is talk about emotions. So we're going to dive deep on it, have this conversation to just expose all those stigmas that are there, that negative stigmas, and why it's not good to listen to those versus you approaching it and dealing with it head on. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing well. Thank you for having me on. Pleasure to sit with you again.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time out your day to come in and talk with us. I know we had a chance to speak a while back, and we didn't quite get the chance to fully put that one out into the atmosphere, but this one, definitely going to be a good talk.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you major? What do you focus in as far as professional wise, or what is your area of expertise when it comes to mental health?
Yes. So my name is Darius Fennell. I'm the face behind Beyond Anxiety. My mission is to dismantle stigmas one conversation at a time, to get folks to advocate for their mental health, and also stress the importance of partnering with licensed professionals. So I'm a published author of the book, Leaving Jupiter, Navigating Your Anxiety Recovery, speaker, coach, and mental health and therapy advocate.
Awesome. Listen, thank you so much. All those titles, all those descriptions makes you a busy man, and I'm just grateful that you're able to come on our platform to discuss this matter. So we're going to jump right into it, right, with our very first question regarding mental health stigmas here. All right. So without any delay, the very first one. What is a mental health stigma that has hindered our communities for seeking professional help?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, or even just starting with the definition of stigma, right? It's a demarcation of shame. Right? It's nothing that you want to be associated with or have a label connected to you or, your who you are as a person. And so I have seen, and I'll speak to my own personal testament of how they have affected me, is you don't want to appear to look weak, lazy, or crazy, right? For men, we definitely don't want to look weak because culturally, we were taught that you were a chump if, you looked weak or could defend yourself or, showed any type of weakness or showed any type of, emotion that would be considered a weak. And so I think when you look at who has been an example for us to be vulnerable, we haven't had it. Who has even given us the advice to say, hey, it's okay to do that? We haven't had that. And so even though now you're starting to hear more about, the importance of taking care of your mental health and going to see a therapist and things like that, there has been nothing that has shown us the how part, right? We've always known the why, but we want to hide and try to pretend that everything is okay or suffer in silence. And I did that for years until about 7 years ago now. Yeah, coming up on the anniversary of that first big panic attack that I thought was a heart attack and landed me in a hospital for a week. Having endless tests, they took more blood than I can remember, x-rays, at everything, heart monitoring, EKG, heart echo, all types of stuff. And they couldn't find anything. But in my mind, I'm not really thinking about mental health still. I'm thinking, oh, it's got to be my heart, because the moment it happened, I was actually asleep. Right? So you would think if you're associating like a circumstance or something you're thinking about, something you're anticipating or worrying about, oh, I gotta go to court tomorrow, or my spouse is having surgery, or they announced layoffs at work, and I don't know if I'm going to be included or not. Like, you're anticipating something, so your emotion is associated with that thing that you're worried about. I didn't have that, and that's why I didn't really want to connect what I was dealing with mental health. I'm thinking, okay, my heart is over 140 beats per minute at rest, and I was knocked out. So why is this happening? Right?
Yeah.
That worried me, and I told my wife, I looked at it, I said, look, you got to take me to the hospital. I think this is it. What was crazy was I'm going through my mind about, does she know where the health insurance papers are? Have I done enough for the kids? Have I done enough for her? I'm thinking about, you know what? maybe should I tell her she can remarry if I'm gone? Like all these like in the blank, like mindsets that I've
Yeah.
never, you don't really think about, you have to think about for another 20, 30, 40 years was now, right in front of me. The whole the culprit behind why I was faced with all that was because of stigmas that prevented me from getting the help that I was repeatedly told I needed over probably 2 decades. And I said,
Wow.
I'm doing that.
Yeah.
The bill came due and I couldn't pay it. And here we are with all these different tubes and stuff connected to me. And hey, we can't find anything. So they sent me home and basically said, follow with your primary care physician and basically good luck. And I'm like, but I'm leaving the same way I came in. So how is this helpful?
Right.
Well, and what do I do? And honestly, that is what inspired me to write my book was if I were to hand off something to someone as a gift and say, if they were just coming home from the hospital like me, what would I, boom, here, start here with this. And I wish I had that back then.
Yeah.
The trial and error. There was a lot of going back to the hospital or additional blood work and tests. I probably hounded my cardiologist to try to convince him that you haven't found the issue yet. Right. So
Yeah.
4 tests. They had a monitor on me that was, how long did that thing stay on? It wasn't quite 2 weeks, but it was about 12 days, maybe 11 days that it monitors your heart round the clock. And it's literally
Wow.
touching you. So like, when you take a shower, you got to kind of wash around it and stuff.
Pressure on yeah.
It never comes off. Sent that in, had the follow-up appointment with him. He's like, other than your heart rate being fast, he's like, if there was an issue, it'd be right here in this column. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm telling you, nothing wrong with your heart. He's like, go home, have a glass of wine, take your family to the park. From a cardio standpoint, there's not much more I can do for you other than, medicate stuff for just, your own quality of life and comfort. But
Yeah.
I really don't need this. I wasn't convinced. Finally, I said, okay, I'll consider going to therapy. And the funny thing was earlier that year, I had a therapist lined up and I was just about to pull the trigger and do it. And I said, I'm good. I'll be all right. I mean, I've come out of hard stuff before. Let me just continue coasting on. But again, as you mentioned about this, I have stigmas, and hindered. That was it. Because I was like, you know what? Back in my mind, am I weak if I do this? Am I lazy if I do this? Well, if I tell somebody I'm at therapy, they're going to think I'm crazy. Nah, I'm good. I'll wait until something really bad happens. If it does,
Right.
because I think I can, wiggle my way out, then, it's there.
Wow.
Man, I'm sorry I did that because what I thought was going to be maybe a couple weeks of, whatever medicine, sleep, whatever little regimen I could put together with, a therapist or whatever, that I'd be back to normal. And it ended up being like a 4-year journey before I was able to figure everything out. But you consider, like I said, the 2 decades I had before that to actually take action.
You just didn't.
Now, it reminds me when I used to have a Honda Accord and I had a check engine light. And I ignored that thing for probably 2 or 3 years. Like, it's a Honda, right? Cars
Yeah.
they last forever until they don't, right?
Right.
And then one day, timing belt chain went on it. Somebody told me that years before that, before I
What
done it.
happened?
Well, I thought, I was like, this guy trying to take me for, you gotta, you know,
Yeah. Boy,
I didn't do what I needed to. And now you can't just do a simple, I'll just do an oil change. No, you need a whole new engine now.
yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my body is like, no, you're not just going to sleep it off for 2 weeks and think you're going to be back to normal now. There are things that you've been in your reserve for the last like 5 years and you spent it. So there's not going to be a quick recovery now. You're going to have to walk, patiently through this and step by step and ask people for help, for specialists, and do exactly what they tell you to do as you give them feedback for what's working and what's not working. So
Right.
I didn't like it.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, it's that the stigma over mental health is it makes you seem weak, it makes you seem, soft or whatever. And it's also accompanied by, like you were saying, people around you, because they didn't really address their emotions in that way. So the phrase "Black people don't need therapy" or "Black people don't go to therapy," uh, do you think that's still harming today's communities within our proper chain of circles? Because I'm still hearing it until today, and and it started way back when. So
Well, yeah.
that stigma, do you think is still being passed on down the line, and how do we tackle that and challenge that hurdle?
Yeah, it is, but I'm also noticing more people like myself who are advocates. Like I always say the disclaimer, I'm not a licensed professional in
Mm-hmm.
medical or, mental health, but I speak about my lived experience. And all I can do is be an example by being vulnerable and open to where allowing the stigmas to get the best of me cost me family, costs the people I work with not with myself not being able to show up as the best version of myself. Right? But I'm seeing more and more people on social media, like myself, and as well as licensed clinicians who are speaking up and saying, you know, um, the importance as well as benefits. It's not just that you're going to go into somebody's office and cry about something your parents did to you when you were 5. It's more than just that. It may be a major component of it, but everybody's situation is unique. I didn't come up in an abusive household. Both my parents were present in my house, so I don't have that particular component. However, both my parents were educators in the school system for over 30 years, so there was an expectation of performance that was,
Mm-hmm.
I internalized that, okay, well, if I do well, then I'm worthy of love.
Mm,
And then you carry that into your adulthood. It was nothing, that they did wrong, but that was how I had interpreted, now
wow.
when I have my own kids, like I understand what it is they were trying to get me to do, but
Mm-hmm.
like when I talk to my brothers, like they have their own different spin on how things affected them, even though we all grew up in the same house.
Yeah.
Like, there were a lot of positive that came with expectations of you doing well and behaving. But at the same time, there was also that my parents came from, the Jim Crow South era.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, there were certain things that you didn't have a conversation with your parents. It's compliance or punishment, right? It doesn't mean like you got spanking, because I know like now everybody's talking about gentle parenting and stuff. There's a lot.
Yeah.
You agree with some aspects of it.
Yeah.
Now that I'm like, you know what, there's some aspects of being a parent that I want to do, different
Mm,
with my kids. But we didn't really have that option to have conversations to where you had space to say, you know what, mom, dad, I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling anxious. You
yeah.
know, he does a meme where a child is trying to explain that to their parent, and the response from the parent was, go in there and depress some dishes. We don't talk about that. You know what I'm saying? You better go in there and figure it out. Or, hey, you just sad, or you just being, whatever, ungrateful, or,
Right.
you haven't seen real hard times. Why? When I was your age, I had a da 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 da. But yeah, but
That is true. And I've seen that happen too, where is me being from Africa, right? So it's not crazy, but it's a bit of a how do I call this? Like a shocking thing to hear. It's like, though growing up in the western side of the world, well, eastern side of the world, things are happening in the West. The mindset of the West is still kind of almost the same when it comes to that generation of parenting. The whole emotions are not talked about. They're just dealt with silently. It's very daunting, and it's like not good. It has harmed a lot of our parents themselves, our uncles, our aunts, or it has created this style of parenting or a style of being that if you don't match this style, or you're different, or you're soft, like you said earlier, because being from a household of I too grew up in the same two-parent household, and my story could be a little bit different, but there were things that I dealt with, or things that I went through that, had I not addressed it correctly, this would have led to an area of a mental breakdown down the line. And then I remember bringing it up to whether it be my older brothers or my cousins. They're just like, I wouldn't talk about that. You're just being overboard. I'm just like, nah, we got to talk about it, because what it is it creates that safe space of vulnerability. You touched on it too. You know, you being vulnerable to a professionalist doesn't make you weak. Even if you're being vulnerable to another sibling or to another friend or colleague, someone that you trust, it allows you for room to release all of that out and help you process it better. Sometimes it's a matter of just you hearing that thought process out loud, and then it gives you comfort in a little bit. Because my background is in psychology. I got, my master's in psych. One thing I always tell people is, look, whatever it is emotional that you're dealing with, however you're feeling, like take a second, process what you're feeling, allow yourself the grace and the chance to feel it, then release it. Because just because you're feeling like that, there's nothing wrong with you. Doesn't mean you're the problem. Doesn't mean that you're, oh, the manufacturer messed up. There's a default in me. No, no, you're human. It's natural. Feel it, process it, and then find a way to deal with it or cope with it. If it's going to therapy, absolutely go for it. I would never say no to therapy as well, too, on my end. Not just because I'm trying to, make the pockets of my fellow colleagues bigger, but, I know what therapy can do and I know how it can help. So if you're tuning in this episode and you're watching it, you're not alone. It's okay for you to ask for help. That's the other thing, too. People think if I ask for help, I'm going to be made weak, or if I ask for help, I mean I'm bothering somebody or I'm burdening somebody. Not true. One of our sponsors in this channel is the Better Help, which is online therapy and help and assist you finding the proper therapist so you can partner up with and you can discuss many matters that you got going on. And it's very convenient and it's done on your schedule and your time, and they work along with you. So actually for this episode, I'm going to drop the link in the bio. So just click it and get yourself a little 10% discount for your first month.
You touched on the aspect of kind of sitting with that emotion, right?
Mhm.
And to be honest, when I first started therapy, it felt counterintuitive, right? I got
So,
where I said, all right, I'm brave enough now to talk about stuff, right? But I also want to get far away from it as possible, you know? It's not how healing works, And my therapist always had a good way of, she had this thing called, let's pause. I'm like, why are we pausing? I want to, it's 4th and 20. I'm ready to punt this thing as far.
right.
But the thing is, it's a part of who you are. And what needs to happen is a perspective shift. There's very few things you can just outright get rid of or cure, right?
Mm,
There's certain things that really just need to be kind of transmuted or transformed, or even a reprogramming of the mind. Because, one of my other therapists had mentioned to me, she would always say, is there another way or is there another perspective?
mm,
Right? I think the first thought that comes, or the catastrophic thought, or the negative thought, or the wounded, traumatic thought is the only thing that exists. And it's not, right? It's the one that we've carried. You talked about like how our parents kind of came from an era of where, we didn't allow the emotions and other stuff, but that was a survival mode tactic, right? And
mhm,
there are acute small times where survival mode is necessary.
mhm,
It's not sustainable, and it shouldn't be for like an entire lifetime, because something's going to be out of balance, right?
okay.
Survival mode, certain things become expendable. Sleep, proper eating, your self-care of taking care of like your rest in your body and exercise like that. Some of those things go by the wayside, like connecting
Mhm,
with people. You mentioned about different support groups. That's another healthy thing. You mentioned about being vulnerable. All those things are far detached from being in survival mode. You're doing what you can to get through the day.
yeah.
And realize how much our parents in previous generations, because that was a matter of like living back then. You had to be in a survival mode and there was no place for emotions. It's how am I going to live and make it to the end of the day? The thing is
Yeah.
that times have evolved and changed. We don't have the same dangers and restrictions and limitations that our parents and grandparents had. But the mentality didn't shift with the change. You know what I
That
mean?
is true.
Got stuck in this fight or flight mode, in survive mode, and don't be weak mode, and don't show emotion mode, when there should be places, safe places, where you can be vulnerable. In my book, Leaving Jupiter, I mentioned my definition of vulnerability, and that's being open and trusted environments,
Mm,
right? Not every space is a safe space where you need to share, facts about yourself that are like vulnerable things or things wounded or trauma. Not everybody is in a mature place. Not everybody is in a goodwill place to hear stuff like that. But your therapist, and this is why I advocate for it so much, is professionally trained and by law, unless there's self-harm or the threat of somebody else being harmed, they can't talk about what you missed in that room outside of that therapy office.
Correct.
And or outside the, if you do it remotely through a Zoom or whatever,
Correct.
those facts and information cannot go outside of their notes. And
Yeah.
so, that's what made me feel safe about, okay, yeah, I can share a lot of things that I've been holding on for years, right? And I want not necessarily to move past it, but I want to heal from it, have a proper perspective. So it's not something that's always being used as a trigger against,
You said something really key there, saying being in a space that you can tell the story and move past it and healing. Mental health is not a destination, but a process.
journey.
Yes. It's not this. It's not like, all right, hurry up, come on, let's do this today. I'm gonna start today, and by 5:30 I should be better. No,
But
it's not a
that,
distance. It's a process that's gonna take a couple more visits. So because most people think, all right, I'm gonna talk to the therapist. They're gonna figure me out. Think I'm a nutcase. Nah, it's not about that. It's more so of knowing that you shouldn't be ashamed of those emotions that brings you to a therapist, because your story will inspire others one day, right? Like, if you feel ashamed of it, then why are you really even going? Because it's all in your head. Get out, to say, for the lack of better terms, get the heck out of your own head. It's easier said than done, but most of the stories are the things that we've told ourselves about opening up or being vulnerable or going to therapy. It's just that the things that we have told ourselves. And of course our surrounding as well too. But as an adult, you kind of had left, and you kind of need to learn how to silence the voice around you and tune the negativity out. That comes with a lot of, time and patience and understanding of who you are as a self individual, to know I won't let things outside infiltrate my mental space, infiltrate my heart, and infiltrate my comfort zone. I control what I do around these four walls of this building, which is my home, and I control how I react based on what somebody does to me. You shouldn't let it go the other way around. So it's literally, it's a journey. It's a process. It's a journey that gets you to that better place. So it's not a rush.
I'm glad you said that, because my first few visits, that
Right.
was the mentality. And if I were to be honest, I was trying to, and again, this is a survival mode tactic. I was trying to manipulate my therapist into giving me these check boxes, right? Give me these 5 things. I'm going to do them. I'm out of here. You'll never see me again. Right. But I was,
That first name. I'm gonna call him. I'm gonna text him. Like, well, job well done.
well, the good thing was they knew what I was doing.
Of course, they're trained.
They looked at me like this. They were just like,
Yeah.
Darius, but when you're in a crisis mode like that,
Mhm.
again, things become expendable, right?
Mm.
Manipulation isn't like, it's not a healthy tactic, right? And it's not healthy within relationships, even between a client therapist relationship dynamic, right? I was so much in a crisis fight or flight mode and stuck in my nervous system. I was like, I will do whatever it takes to get out of this,
Right.
including manipulating therapists, or try to, you know.
Right.
But once I learned like the beauty of the about to stutter, the present
Yeah.
moment. I was about to say the
Right.
present moment. It did become pleasant eventually, but the
Right.
moment, um, and accepting that, here's a big one: control is an illusion. You never had. You never had it. You can respond to stuff, but I would even argue that was somehow conditioned and pre-programmed, in your upbringing as well. So it's like, how much choice do you? It's like right now, if I told you tomorrow red means go and green means stop, right? You're so conditioned that when that light turns green, that you're going to hit the gas. That
Mhm.
even if I told you, it's the opposite, you're still going to struggle for a
Yeah.
little, right? So is it choice, or were you conditioned because of the repetition as
Mhm.
grooming that happened over time, right? And so you took her time with me and helped me to learn how to walk and be with the discomfort. And I talk about this in my book, the difference between discomfort and dangerous, right? And she would always ask me a question. That catastrophic thought, going back to the cognitive behavioral therapy, right?
Mhm.
Cognitive distance, Do you have evidence for that catastrophic thought? Right? In this present moment, do you have evidence? No. It's me speculating and predicting based on this hypervigilant, hypersensitive
Mhm.
nervous system that is constantly scanning for danger, even though there is none. Right? I use the analogy of, so you had an alarm for your house, right? And somebody busted the window. You want that alarm to come on, and as a deterrent to get them to go away, the
Yeah.
enforcement comes and make sure everything's cool, you know. But now, what if a housefly landed on your house? Would you want that same alarm to go off the way it did with the burglar?
No.
Absolutely not, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no danger. It's a fly.
Right.
It's a fly, you know. But the other aspect of anxiety is understanding the difference between the anxious thoughts and the alarm in the body. For
Mhm.
me, it wasn't so much the thoughts. I dealt with that for forever. So I was so conditioned.
Right.
These things would just kind of come and go. The alarm in the body, however, had several different weird symptoms that this is where I thought I was like, going out. Heart palpitations, tachycardia,
I know
skipping
about those.
off rhythm. But I mean, it was like intense. I don't mean just like I usually have something like in passing where, you feel something and then it doesn't happen again for the rest of the day or even for a few days or maybe for a few weeks. But
Right.
this happening like every 5-10 seconds. Okay, at some point, it's going to lose rhythm and probably stop, right? But tight chest, tight throat, insomnia, tight sinuses, where it feels like I'm not breathing, depersonalization, derealization, dissociation, all the type things where you feel like either you're not real or the environment around you is not real,
Mm.
dizzy, feeling lightheaded, vertigo, everything kind of appearing bright, like all those different things that kind of started to, converge on me. And, would last from the time I woke up in the morning to the time I went to bed. So you can see how like I was so desperate for my therapist to give me something.
Right.
Okay. Give me something. Get me
Yeah.
out
Get
of
me out about it. Yeah.
this. This is torment. I was being tortured, and we started to learn about she was teaching me about the different breath techniques,
Mhm.
meditation. There's all types of different apps, or you can just go on YouTube and type something in. I started taking my nutrition more seriously, started reading more about magnesium and also, but talking with my doctor about different supplements because I was on different medications and you don't want, any type of,
Yeah.
crisscross applesauce going on there.
Right.
Contraindications or something would lessen the effect of what the medicine is supposed to do or, do more over the top stuff, right? I
Yeah.
was blood pressure medicine for a while. And so I had to let my cardiologist know, hey, I'm going to start taking fish oil and magnesium. Do you have any concerns? He was like, no, just, keep taking your blood pressure. And over time, he was able to cut my medicine in half. But that was, me monitoring and tracking my, metrics in a journal.
Mm.
And this is why I say in my book that journaling is non-negotiable. You have to do it. If you want to make any progress, you have to be able to track. If you want to grow, you got to measure. You got to know where you are. What is the awareness of where we currently are? You set goals with your professional partnership, whether it be your therapist or your doctor, right? They know your medical history, they know your mental, emotional history. It can kind of give you, number one, a pace. And secondly, healthy guides and boundaries so where you're not doing things too drastic or too fast, because that can be just as detrimental.
You said something else key right there. Your professional partnership.
Yes.
Unfortunately, within our communities, people don't look at medical insurance as something of high value. I say that to say it is important to have coverage for these essential things. It's not, should I? No, this is very essential. You need to have medical insurance. And within those medical insurances, see how policies could be written that will cover you if you need to go seek professional help when it comes to mental health as well. I know, like I said earlier, there's a lot of groups that will do it, but most people are like, well, I don't have the money to do it. Find a way. Because that's one of the things. They're like, well, he said professional help. I don't have professional help. I don't have medical insurance. I don't have all this. And that's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. You know, you need help. Go seek it. And it's okay, because the other thing too is like a lot of Black men don't seek help. And I'm saying that because they think they got to be tough all the time. Granted, it's how they were brought up, but it gets tiring. Like it literally gets tiring, especially if you don't have the strong support system. And
Yes.
that's the other thing too. We're touching on this, and I know you yourself, you are a happily married man, and you know, children and everything. Was it challenging for you at that time, knowing that, man, if I'm doing these things, does my wife's perspective of me change? Do my kids think I'm less like, what was the mental thought process during that time period? If you want to share, you don't have to, but of course, it's one of those things that it's real because it's a backlash. Like, I want to seek help, but when I do seek help, is my significant other going to think less of me? How do I challenge that? How do I navigate that? Like, how was your experience during that time
Yeah.
with your
So
relationship at home?
yeah, I definitely had all those emotions that you mentioned. Like, how am I going to appear? I have 3 boys and 1 girl, but it's like, man, I don't want to appear weak to them. You know, it was so bad. Like, I couldn't drive anywhere. You know, we were going on trips. Like, I would just kind of take a coat and cover my head up until we got there. You know, and just normal activities around the house where I would wrestle with them or just spend time with them or do
Yeah.
was out the window because my body was so just kind of hypersensitive to like just stimulus in general. There was a period where I stopped watching TV. I couldn't use my phone only for like small periods of time because it got me so like just, you know, roused up to where it really felt like my body was shaking or vibrating.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I spent a lot of time just under the covers in my bed in a dark room, you know,
Wow.
and for quite some time. And if I had to go anywhere, I had to muster up like that before the rest of the week just to go to a doctor's appointment or go to the grocery store. But yeah, I mean, you in most homes, you know, you have I don't want to get into like gender roles and stuff. But
Yeah.
has their role in their own household in terms of things that they do. My
Yeah.
wife is a nurse, so there's certain things that she does, you know, very well in our household that I don't care because I'm the man that, you know, she's doing those things. It's like, no, it's more efficient for her to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, kids, no, get all that stuff, man. You
Yeah.
know, you work as a unit. But the things that I would do, kind of some of those things went by the wayside because I just wasn't physically capable.
Mm.
I did have the feeling, wow, what do they think about me? But when I keep using the phrase crisis mode, it was so bad. I honestly just didn't care. Like, I have to get better because this is literally tormenting me from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep. So I don't care what I need to do to come out of this. I'm going to do it. Like, the student is ready for the teacher to show up and walk me through this. I've learned also through therapy that like more than one thing can exist at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, I could have those emotions of, yeah, I feel kind of weak and vulnerable around my family, and I don't like maybe the perception I feel like I'm giving them because I'm not 100% where I used to be. But at the
Hmm.
same time, it's like, you know, I am just innately a fighter, you know, and I found out through this dark process that, you know, one of my main gifts is hope. When everything was stripped away,
Hmm.
the accolades, all the, you know, you work at a Fortune 500 company and engineering background and master's degree, none of that stuff. It got me to where I am, but when your health is not 100% where it's supposed to be, none of that stuff matters because you can't enjoy it. You can't enjoy it, right? What matters the most is understanding why you are here. Why have you been put here, right? And what are the things that are inside of you? And for me, it took a stripping away of all those things to hit rock bottom and say, okay, who am I now? Now that I
Mm.
can't perform, now that I can't achieve, now that I can't, like, you know, put myself in overdrive where I
Yeah.
felt the most comfortable and the most kind of worthy of anything. Now that I can't do those things, who am I really? You know? And for me, the one main thing that I saw, and this was an exercise I did with my therapist, she said, write down, she had a big whiteboard in her office, write down all the negative things that you're experiencing, write down the positive. And I mean, big old, probably about a dozen things on the negative side. On the positive side, only thing I could write was hope. And that's when it hit me. I was like, that's my gift. And that's my way out. And that's my gift back to the world. And so hitch my wagon to it. And, you know, my definition of hope is confident expectation, right? When you stop expecting, doesn't matter what you believe. If you don't expect it, you can believe it to be true, but if you don't expect it for you,
Right.
it's not going to happen. You're going to be stuck. You know, when you innately have something and it's who you are,
Hmm.
it's what you're going to end up doing. You have to accept it and embrace your real identity in order for you to come out and be who you're really supposed to be. And once I did that, again, this wasn't an overnight revelation, but that one particular day was like a separation between like a before and after moment of, okay,
Right.
this is a different mindset. And that's what I know. Even though everything was still just really rocky, I was like, everything is going to be all right now.
Mm.
I know who I am. I haven't fully developed, and I haven't, because I'm so detached from all the things that I thought made me me, that
Right.
I'm right back in a seed form again. And I'm in the ground, but I'm going to grow through this soil and blossom again. And, over a few years, first leaf came out the soil. I'm like, oh, he's back, baby. Let's go. But it took a lot of compassion, which, to be honest with you,
Mm.
and my therapist at first mentioned that to me, it made me mad. I'm like, compassion isn't going to help me out of this. I want to fight. I want to fight this anxiety. I want to fight these negative feelings. No,
Passion for yourself.
yeah, but I didn't like that. I was like, no, I don't. Because here was another revelation. I did not regard myself as human, worthy of love, worthy of compassion. I regard myself as a machine. And what do we do with machines? We change out the parts that need to be replaced, do the oil change, put a new set of tires on, and throw them back on the back on the racetrack.
That is a strong revelation.
That's what I thought I wanted. But, again, her infinite wisdom of slowing me down and allowing me to look and observe. That's a huge part of mental health recovery journey, is the ability to just have an observation, right? You can't have awareness without the observation, where it's like, okay, I'm doing that thing again. I recognize it. I'm not going to judge it. Not going to shame it. I'm not going to give meaning to it. I just realize that it's happening. Same way it's raining outside. You don't say, oh, the year's ruined because it's raining. No, it's just raining. Okay, I accept that, right? And also accept the fact that I can do about the fact that it's raining, right? But guess what? At some point, that rain is going to pass.
Mm.
It's going to come out again. And I get to decide how I react and what I respond to and what I give my focus and attention to, even while. So that whole kind of phrase that, I don't want to get too preachy here, but Paul was saying in Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ. I base and abound. I think you got to get that base part and really just understand what it's like to be down to ground zero. There it is. There it is. See, I didn't even see that.
I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It hangs up every time I get out of my room, walk in my living room, I see it right there in Philippians 4:13. One of my favorite. As soon as I saw that before I'm buying, this is going up in the wall of the house. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So yeah, you don't have to get preachy. You
Yeah.
already know.
But
you already know.
you really know it for yourself. And I don't want to say for everybody, like they have to go through something bad, right?
Yeah.
But for me, that's what it took because of ego, pride.
Mm.
Pride's a huge one, right? Still working through that one. That's an onion peel, and just accepting that a lot of stuff that I thought was true that I allowed to govern my life wasn't true, wasn't real, wasn't correct. And I needed someone else to come in and tell me the truth, and I'm not going to lie to you, man. There were a few times I went to therapy, I left angry, and not at the therapist, right? But that truth had shook me, and it should, because real truth is going to disturb you. It should offend you. Why? So you can be motivated to change your behavior and accept truth for what it really is.
People don't accept truth at face value.
And I didn't want to do it. Waiting. Let me be honest. I didn't like what you just said. It hurt my feelings. And if this is true, that everything I've attached to this belief system, you remember the game Jenga where you pull the blocks out? If you don't do it, everything collapses.
Yeah.
I had a lot of those moments. I'm like, oh, I got to start over? Yeah, because that thought process, those belief systems were wrong. And you base like part of your life and your programmed thoughts off of those bad beliefs, right? And so this is why I feel like you cannot do this on your own. You need somebody to help walk you through the process and help you to, as you're taking these bricks that aren't healthy down, you're also learning how to build, the healthy bricks and healthy, boundaries and things back up. It's a very delicate process. because there are certain things and conversations and truths that, again, sometimes I'd be in there bawling, just literally crying my eyes out, right? And it wasn't even, you wouldn't even consider it like something very deep, but it
Mm,
through something that I was holding on to. In that moment, I started to like let go. I was, number one, I felt lighter afterwards, but I was like, okay, even though this hasn't been healthy for me, it's familiar. So what in the world do I do now?
mhm,
Truth do I hold on to now? Right. And sometimes this is where the trap comes in, where it's like, okay, that was bad. Like Egypt was bad, but it's what we knew. So let's go back. You know what I mean?
that's it right there. And then sometimes, it gets us to go back to what we knew we were comfortable with because the change is different, the change is challenging, and we're realizing it. And the reason why I asked the question of how that looked like in the home, because raising children in today's society, some parents are, more accepting to it, the gentle parenting style. And some parents are just like, no, I'm just gonna raise my kids the way my parents raised me. How do we how do we approach that mindset, knowing what we know now as a society? What do you think is the best way to approach the mindset of, if there's a way we should bring up children to be, one, open to talk about feelings, understanding their emotions, because growing up as a kid, something happens, I started crying. My mom will say, "Stop crying."
Yep. What's up, boy?
It wasn't even like boys don't cry. It's just like, just don't cry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm hurt though, right?
Yeah.
And that's nothing to knock my own mother. I love my mom dearly. Mom, if you're watching, hi mom.
You get a call later.
But she gonna be like, "Why you throw me under the bus? You gonna throw me under the bus for your little show?" But no, no, just not even just that. It's just like, just don't cry, And then later on, boys don't cry or wipe your tears or be strong. It's like, do you think that's the proper mechanism to groom children on emotional awareness, or do you think it's absolutely wrong? I think it's wrong because it's not allowing them time to process. Because the one thing you said earlier was you were mad that you were faced with the truth at some point because of certain belief that you had growing up. You built who you are, your identity around that belief. That's one of the identities that is always, for lack of a better term, highlighted or told. Men don't cry, boys don't do this and that, and then therefore when there's something is happening, they can't really speak on their emotions. And then the older they get, well, don't cry when you're a kid, but then when you become a little bit of a young adult, when you're trying to speak on your emotions, don't speak unless you're spoken to. But then when you become older, you're dealing with, you better mind be respectful when adults are talking or when adults are around. It's like nowhere in the stage of my growth or my upbringing I was allowed to express,
Right.
feel, hurt, and be heard. But no,
Exactly.
kids are meant to be seen and not heard. And then we become adult men. We don't know how to process feelings. We don't know how to talk about emotions. We're dealing with all these things. So I say that to say, why do you think, or what is the best way you think to approach that with children as they are younger and they're growing up today's society?
Well, my mentality now after going through my breakdown and crisis and all that stuff is, look what it did to you. And do you want your children to go through that? And you have to model what you want to see. So I started to look into a bunch of different things, right? I mean, everything from, aspects of gentle parenting, as well as like, how do I empower my kids, right? I don't want them to be like so independent that they're like unhealthy, don't feel like they need to, rely on anybody or anyone. Like you're getting back into the survival mode again, right? And again, this is where you start to, you know, treat people as expendable, right? Because you're just doing what you're trying to do to get through the day and make the most for yourself and nobody else, right? Um, there's another thing called, I wish I could remember the name of it. There are several folks that I follow online that have different approaches to, raising kids and having them have a different mindset. I wish I could remember the name of it. Daggone it.
It's okay. It'll come back. Somebody probably watches will be like, "Oh, I know what it is." Great. If you do, put it in the comment.
But it's about empowering your kids and then understanding like their different learning styles. Like I'm what's called a highly sensitive person, and my kids have varying levels of that as well, right?
Uh,
So when you have someone who is highly sensitive, the approach for how you talk to them is different, right? Their ability to detect things that are going on in the room is much different from someone who's not an HSP.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it it's even with teaching them how to bring their body back into a relaxed state. The approach is different. Showing them how to process their emotions is different. And really, the biggest thing I would say is making space, right? There's been times where one of my kids has just been crying, and I'll just say, can I sit here with you? I'm not trying to fix anything, right? Because, we were either told, stop crying, like you said, when we were younger, or you had a parent that wanted to fix whatever the problem was so that she would stop crying, right? It is not just about the problem. It's about valuing the fact that they are hurting and something's bothering them.
Mm-hmm.
What are you modeling for them that shows when they feel bad, are they going to associate that with shame when they become adults?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, are they going to associate that with, okay, not only did I make a mistake, but I am the mistake, right? Or are you going to get in a space to say, you know what? I got to do a thing called, well, I'm going to give you a do-over, right? Whatever happened is already happened. And I've already told you it's not acceptable. But, how can I help support you to do it correctly? Because sometimes you don't either have the skill, have the confidence to do it, or you're not comfortable doing whatever it is that you're supposed to do. And kids go into a freeze mode. It's like, well, why didn't you do such and such? They don't have the
Yeah.
intelligence at that point to tell you, you know what, teacher made me feel bad today at school, and I didn't know how to process it. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, tasks I was supposed to do, or chores I was supposed to do, or I was supposed to clean my room, couldn't because that thing was bothering.
That's the thing too, right? Wow, you said that it's association of that thought process with the negative connotation of it is very strong too, because I remember I'm a PK, right? I'm a pastor's kid, right? So a lot of the things we growing up, you're thinking, I don't want to make a mockery of my dad within the church community, within the African community, within whatever, right? So you model, well, I know at least I did. I modeled certain behaviors out of the assumption, don't make mockery of your father's name.
Yes.
Don't make fun of the father's,
Yeah.
title.
The family
And
name, everything.
the family name means everything, especially, I know here as well too, but especially back in Africa, something happens, thing where the family's name to the point where it's really not healthy because the certain parents will look at the family name and honor over the emotions and understanding of the kid's emotion. So they would say, well, you should have known better because you have this last name. You should have behaved better because you were raised from this parent or this and that. It's just like, I should have, but I didn't. Now what do we do? Right. And
Exactly.
then to the point where even sometimes where I've seen it, like, I haven't experienced it, but I've seen it happen other families where the parent will even go as far as making fun of the child or not belittling, but scolding the child in public, and whether it be within the, neighborhood or whatever the case might be, just to even make it known, that the child messed up. That's very bad. That's very bad because what that does is that does it, that creates a thought process that's associated with a negative reaction, then to make the person think either A, I can never mess up, or two, who cares if I mess up? And now they're living their life with assumption of, regardless the consequences, I don't care because the worst has already happened, right? Which is still not good as well, too, because that individual ends up start hurting other people, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever. It just creates this domino effect of hurt people hurting people, So,
Yeah. Vicious
but
cycle. And I found,
yeah,
figured out the word I couldn't think of is
hey, is what?
executive function.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
a good one. I have to look into that.
Yeah, that's and Dr. Anna Louise Lockhart is one who specializes in that in pediatric psychology. Yeah, I've been following her for a few years now. She is excellent.
Say executive function.
Yes.
Awesome. Writing it down. I'll read up into it, But yeah, wow. Great conversation. Great talk. And I know we were supposed to have a good 45 minutes, but we kind of went over a little bit here, and I know you're a busy man. So before we wrap up here, what would be your best advice? And I know you touched on, and thank you so much for, feeling comfortable enough to speak on your own experience, your own story. Like I said earlier, the road to mental health, your story will be an inspiration to somebody else. So for those who are listening or tuning in, if you feel inspired to seek the proper format help, there are a lot of groups out there, but if you don't even know where to begin, write myself, DM me. I will definitely be a strong support system for you. But Mr. Darius, before we head out, any advice you would give, anyone that's struggling with mental health issue and they want to be on the path of mental health recovery. And I like how you pointed out earlier. I heard her just say, "Oh, mental health recovery." So it's once you look at it like that, you should automatically start processing things of it's a recovery and I'm going to get better. So what would your best advice be for somebody who wants to get on the path of mental health?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, thank you for having me on.
Of course.
Absolute pleasure. And I hope we do it again
Yeah,
sometime in the near
absolutely.
future. But I would say, number one, like you are worthy of getting the help that you need first and foremost, right? That trumps anything that anybody could think about you, could say about you, or even the mental health stigmas that are associated with the resistance from getting the help that you need. That's first and foremost, right? Secondly, whatever you do and you say, you are modeling it for somebody, friends, to kids, spouse, to coworkers. You are serving as some type of model for better or for worse,
Yeah.
right? And so a lot of times, like if the internal motivation isn't enough, the external of, well, think about how this could negatively impact your kids. Like you are showing them when you go through something tough, not to ask for help or in silence. By your demonstration, by what you model, right? Because all the time I tell my kids to do something, they do what I do. And I realized that very early on. I was like, okay, I can't just tell them to do stuff. I have to model. If I tell my kids to clean their room, then kind of have to do the same,
Yeah.
right? And a couple of times I would notice if I was in the act of doing something, I'd look over and they'd start doing the exact same thing that I was doing. I was like, yeah, that wasn't 100%, correlation
Right.
time, but it's like, this speaks louder than me telling you, Daddy's telling you to do X, Y, Z. Okay, well, what does it look like? Right? What does it look like? So, you know, secondly, I would say you need a support system. Nobody can do recovery or repair, especially for the brain, for the mind, on their own. Nobody can. And if you can find someone who was able to do it all by themselves, you tell them to write a book and
Facts.
create their own show and go to a university and teach this to masses, right? You need a community, something or someone you can connect to. And so for me, one of the first places to seek help was in the legal safety net of a therapist's office. That was the beginning of the journey. I've also found online groups of folks who are going through the same similar situations. And, you got to be careful about what you share because these folks are people you haven't met sit behind a keyboard. You don't know what their motivations are. They're not under HIPAA or any type of laws that would keep them from sharing the information you tell them to other people using it against you, right? But I used it as an avenue to ask about, like, what have people experienced with medications, right? Not that I would use it as medical advice, but
You know,
there are certain things, in classes of drugs that I've never taken this stuff before. Like, how did it affect you? Or what are the potential
right.
effects? Or what were some other alternatives? Like, these are types of conversations that I would take back. Again, getting back to the mindset of partnering with licensed professionals. I would take these conversations back to them and say, I want to know your personal assessment of this information that I'm bringing to you or my general concerns, right? Because I'm in the driver's seat. I'm advocating for myself, but I'm using the wise counsel around me. Based on your professional training, all the clinical hours and the master's degree and all that stuff that you have, I'm
Mhm.
pulling from that. I'm
Right.
relying on that.
Yeah.
So I'm going off what I think or going on a search engine and trying to look up some stuff and say, oh, I think this is what's going on, right? I know folks who thought they had an anxiety issue and went and had some blood work done and found out they had a thyroid issue. T3, 4, THH metrics were all over the map. You wouldn't have known that just from, let me just go on a search engine and type in these keywords. You wouldn't have known it, right?
Yeah.
Or, I want to take this natural herb and it'll make me feel better. What if it makes the metrics on your thyroid function or whatever organ that's not functioning correctly? What if it causes that to function worse?
Yeah.
You don't know. So why not the same way if a light comes on in your car or you hear a funky sound coming from your engine, you go to a mechanic.
Facts.
You got an issue going on with your mind. Why not go to the expert who was trained to deal with it? Right? You have to get to a point where you stop lying to yourself, telling yourself that you're okay when you're not, telling yourself that you can function and get through the day when you're not, telling yourself that it's going to be all right when you're using these negative coping mechanisms that aren't healthy for you or the people that are around you. Right? And you're lying to yourself. And I did it for years. So I'm talking the talk, but also walk the walk in consequence of ignoring doing the things I was supposed to do. And when I say the number of people who came to me and said the exact same thing, you need to slow down. You need to go see a therapist. You need to get help. You need to, all these XYZ things. And I said, you know what? My MO is push the clutch in, hit another gear and hit the gas. Right? Because this is what has always worked until it did. And so I'm saying I've come out of the burning building, able to heal, but I'm telling you, you don't have to go in the burning building to feel like you need to get help, right? Go when it's sunny. If you have like a major life transition coming, you're getting married or you have a kid coming, you lose a job, you start a new job, you relocate to a new location, go see a therapist. Because guess what? That person you were before that major change, you're not them anymore. Right? You're not them. And that's the problem of carrying an old mindset into a new season of life. Eventually, this is going to happen, right? And because you're not properly functioning, anything that's out of place is going to cause resistance and pain, right? And for me, it took pain as a messenger to say, you can't do this anymore. What I'm telling you is you don't have to wait for the crisis mode. You don't have to wait until things get really bad to say, okay, I'll go see a therapist. That's what I did, and I went in there desperate, trying to get them to tell me, really get them to do what I wanted them to do so I could heal the way I wanted to heal. And it doesn't work.
No, it does not. It definitely does not.
So I would say you need a framework to walk through recovery, right? I provided a framework in my book, Leaving Jupiter, Navigating Your Anxiety Recovery, as well as a journal, little plug here, for Leaving Jupiter Daily Journal, which talked about the importance of tracking the things that you're doing and looking into your progress. Here's a main book, Leaving Jupiter. And again, whether you purchase my book directly or the reoccurring theme is advocate for yourself with licensed professionals. Track your progress. Give that feedback to the licensed professionals. And you will watch and see the progress, the improvement, your quality of life increase. And then you'll have a story to tell other people and lead them into a new place of freedom as well. So sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, listen, it's much needed, Wow. One thing we touched on throughout this whole episode is the consistency and transparency, right? The message is clear for you. So if the audience have stuck with us to the end of this episode, to this moment, we thank you for being here. Don't let your pride get in the way of getting you the help you properly need. The Bible says pride comes before destruction and the highest before the fall. So you think you're riding high, like Mr. Darius said, relocation, the new adventure in life, the new chapter, new season. Don't bring the old mindset into the new season or the new chapter. It will definitely clash. So don't tell yourself, I'm good, I got it. When you know for a fact you don't, it's okay. Asking for help does not make you weak. I'm going to say that one more time. Asking for help does not, by any term of the definition, make you weak. Makes you self-aware, makes you self-value. Like you value yourself enough to say, I need help, and just silence the voice around you. But Mr. Darius, thank you so much again for taking your time. And on behalf of me and the team here at the King's Hall Podcast, we are thrilled that you have shared your story with us and unique insight in your story to help our audience here grow. Again, the purpose of this podcast is to help educate, evaluate, and help edify the minds of the kings and queens of today's society so they can improve, being it mentally, physically, financially, or even spiritually, right? And people have their own ways of dealing with things, but the majority of people don't even know where to start, how to deal with that thing. So that's who we're appealing to. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. Again, I will put the information to your Instagram, your link to the book where they can get it at. It's on Amazon, correct?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Send me all of that. Well, I think I already have it, so
Mhm.
I'll say send. I have all the information. I will definitely put it out there. So if anybody wants to read the book, um, again, support. And I'll buy myself a copy as well too. You know, I always like to. I got like mad books on my shelf here. You can see it's like all over there. So I'm always reading, looking to, you know, not just increase my thought process, but just be insightful on a lot of things that I don't know. That's how we grow as human beings in a society. But enough about me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be with us. And until next time, remember, stay up, rise to the next level. God's got you. We do too.